Thank you, Chancellor Zimpher, and thank you, President Daniels. I've been asked to begin by asking one or two questions, and then we'll open the floor for comments, for questions. There are 4 microphones. Please walk up to each mic, and I will recognize you one by one, beginning with the first mic, then the second, the third, and finally to the fourth, and then coming back to the first mic. So, President Daniels, within 2 months of being in office, you made a rather dramatic move. You froze tuition for 2 years, and it was the first time it's been done for about 40 years at Purdue. And thereby, you deprived your institution of $40 million. Now, at the same time, you told us you're significantly increasing STEM enrollments, engineering enrollments. I know you're hiring many, many additional faculty. I read one of your speeches in which you said that you want to double the number of students who go abroad, and so on and so forth. Fantastic ideas, but they cost money. So where's the money coming from?
Well, I know you were speaking in jest when you talked about depriving our institution of $40 million. I guess that's literally true, but what I was concerned about was depriving the families of our students of $40 million when many of them are were very pressed at this time. You know, I'll tell you what I think happened. I think my colleagues here would agree. You're right. That decision had to be made before I mean, I learned in business you never have nearly the information you'd like to make a big call, and we've all probably had to accommodate ourselves to the notion that you get 75 or 80% of what you'd like to know, and then you'd better just act. And in this case, I probably didn't have 20%. But it was then or never, and so we simply said, without knowing how we were going to offset it, that let's just try, instead of asking our students' families to accommodate their budgets to ours, let's try to see if we can adjust our spending to their family budgets. And I simply went out to everyone on the campus and said, this shouldn't be impossible. $40 million is a lot of dollars, but it's only a very small percentage of what we're spending. And if everyone will offer ideas, and if everyone will suggest ways, I'll bet you we can do this. It turned out not to be so very hard. And I don't think it's my imagination that it did serve as a little point of unity on the campus. We have a wonderfully, wonderfully varied campus, as everyone here does, and you know, you can't get agreement on much of anything. Nothing's unanimous, what I mean. But this was as close as it came. I couldn't find one person on our campus who didn't say, that'd be good. That'd be a good thing. And so we patched it together from both some economies and also by a little wiser money management in a couple cases. There was some new revenue we found ways to generate. But I'm emboldened by it, really. And as soon as we knew that we had offset the $40 million, we began working on what might come next. And I'm under no illusions that this will be easy, but I will say that the reaction was very strongly positive from students and their families, you might expect, but our alumni and others. We've had a big surge. It's too soon to be sure it's a pattern, but several months into our fiscal year, we've had a big surge in donations for scholarship and student support. It's been and there's been a shift somewhat from other purposes. And my theory is that this has something to do with Boilermakers feeling good that our university is trying to address the affordability problem.
Chancellor Zimpher, in your speech, you mentioned about the challenge to educate more and to educate better. More students in certain fields like STEM education, and to educate better in terms of enhancing quality measured by outcomes, such as graduation rates, retention, narrowing the achievement gap. Educating more, educating better, but could you say something about educating cheaper? Because we all know how to increase access. We all know how to increase quality. Just give us more money. But we are, I think, in this new normal of, at best, flat growth. How are you going to drive down the costs so that it can become more affordable and you can have greater access and greater quality?
Well, first I have to say that the State University of New York lives in an affordable environment in that our annual tuition is around $5,200. And people usually say, do you mean for a course? Or do you mean for a semester? No, I mean for a year for our in-state students. And so I think as an institution in a state environment where we've tried to hold down costs, that's one sort of obvious thing. Our tuition is relatively affordable. But I think the economies of cost of education start with the duplicative expenses we exercise because students aren't learning at the point at which we think they're learning. So 40 to 50% of all kindergartners are already in remediation. And they will not do well by the 4th grade. They will be grossly underperforming by the 8th grade. And if they haven't psychologically dropped out, they will physically drop out. Those who make it to the high school finish line and come to college need massive amounts of remediation, which really is, and maybe the governor in your governor role would say, is paying twice. Didn't we educate at one level and now we're re-educating? So I think the greatest economy of higher education is to find a systematic way to connect with early childhood, elementary and secondary education, way beyond the rhetoric we produce or the soft partnerships we engage in, to truly get more people educated at the time we are educating them so that we save all the money we're spending educating twice. That's a tough nut to crack, and that's why I think APLU is the perfect environment for getting us to work together, not only with our K-12 partners, but with each other. That is an economy of scale. It really is. But we don't see the problem outside our own domain. We kind of think if K-12 would just send us better, ready, prepared people, we would do a better job. And the economy is finding collective impact in working with our K-12 and early childhood partners.
So if one solution is that we come together, have collective impact as you have proposed, and APLU provides such a framework, let me ask you this. The logical extension of that idea will be to create a Ministry of Education in this country. The way you have it in Europe, you have it in many Asian countries, where, for example, standards for online education, standards for competency-based degrees will be set at the national level. Why then not move in that direction as opposed to a very loose group, a very loose membership group? Because what authority does Peter have to bring us together in the ways that will extract efficiencies?
Wallace does not make it easy. So I see the bureaucracy of ministries as making it would squelch the individuality and the diversity that we love to talk about American higher education. On the other hand, I think we're operating at the margins. We are a loosely coupled phenomenon, and only when we get our collective act together will we be able to solve these problems. So my colleagues in the audience from the State University of New York, it's a balance. There are certain things you can do as a system, and there are certain things that you can do as an individual, autonomous institution, and in no way should we eclipse those autonomous identity issues. But we can't solve these problems one institution at a time. So I don't know how many times Peter and I have talked about APLU. Yeah, we are members of APLU, but this is a leadership organization, and that's why we're taking on some of these issues. But the key to collective impact is not just wishing it or setting a target for completion. It's agreeing that the strategies we will use to intervene have evidence behind them that that strategy really works. Quit doing the stuff that we either just like, but we don't know it's effective? Or why shouldn't we have to present evidence that these 2 or 3 strategies really do work for remediation or math competency or other problems we're trying to solve? And then 20 of us do the same thing to see if we can bring change together at scale. Because that's the difference from operating at the margins and scaling up change.
Please start coming to the microphones. I've been waiting for somebody to come up. Otherwise, I have to come up with additional questions.
How's Peter?
Peter, are you walking up? Oh, wonderful.
There's leadership.
This is a question addressed to Governor Daniels. As governor, you did so many. One of the things I thought was particularly exciting was the senior year in high school, which I think we all know is not a particularly productive year. The senior year in high school, you had some of that K-12 money go to colleges or community colleges or universities for that student to begin that college career. That's a part of what Nancy is talking about, I think. It'd be very interesting as a longtime successful governor, what your reactions and thoughts would be to what Nancy is saying.
Well, I think that we have a very, very robust system in our state, and but to my knowledge, it's not any more so than exists most everywhere else for high school students to, and as they are in rapidly growing numbers and quantities, to begin accumulating college credits. Obviously, AP is growing quickly, belatedly in our state, but this is the so-called dual credit system. And it's terrific in the sense that we have a lot of students showing up now with double digits, sometimes 30 or more college credits, and we've got a little work to do at our school to make sure we're giving full recognition to those, but that's growing quickly. What you may have been referring to, though, Peter, was an extension of that principle in which Indiana has said to high school students, if you do accelerate and you complete your requirements in 11 years, as a fairly large number does anyway, we'll give you the money, actually most of the money, we were going to spend on your senior year while you cruised or did whatever it was you were doing, and as long as you apply it to higher education. And that program's in its second year and it's having exponential growth. It's going to take some marketing. The system won't be eager to explain to middle schoolers, for instance, that if you speed up, part of that last year's tuition will show up at a university, but word's getting around anyway. So, you know, on this subject, I just want to give you one quick vignette. A few years ago, proposed the biggest infusion of dollars into higher education by an order of magnitude that Indiana would ever have seen. And silly me, I really thought there would be a lot of support for this idea. We had a revenue source identified. We were going to, in essence, monetize the future growth of the lottery that Indiana has, and so limit the state's dependence on that revenue source while we did something with the proceeds. And it would have been several $100 million. I was really struck by how, one, little understanding there was of what that could have done for the universities of our state. We were going to use it half for affordability, half for research, new faculty and so forth, at the discretion of the school. And also, I was struck by how ineffective the schools were at generating support, even from those in their backyards. So that was the beginning of my period of sobriety, which continues, about the difficulties that we're up against.
The floor is open, so feel free to walk up to the mic. And while you're thinking about walking up to the mic, let me ask Chancellor Zimpher another question. And I want to drill into this issue of, again, reducing costs. how to do more, how to do better, and do it less expensively. Not in terms of total expense, but the marginal cost. So I read that you have proposed, in fact, you're going to implement by 2014, 10 totally online baccalaureate degrees, and that this will generate expects to enroll 100,000 students. Is then technology part of the solution in terms of driving down costs? And might this lead to a class-based stratification of higher education?
Well, there's no single variable that any of us employs to get the job done. So one of the things we're working hard on is this concept of shared services, and I know that you are too. I think the greatest shared service will be creating IT systems that actually work so that we have the data we need to be the evidence-based organizations that we think we need to be, and I think that will create immense efficiencies. We got to the online strategy already having 150 online degree programs because we have a huge population of New Yorkers who are simply not being served by our massive 64 campus system combined with the CUNY system. We have like 11 million adults who are undereducated in the post-secondary realm. And we have a declining demography in high school, but we're trying to use our online to reach undereducated adults. We'd like to see our residential campuses stay intact. We have a lot of investment in our infrastructure, but we have a whole population of people in this country who are not being served, for whom a digital or online enabled system would help them. We don't really expect to make money, but our goal is to help New York recover economically. And the only way they're going to do that is to get more adults ready for the workforce in the high demand fields in an efficient way. And for many adults, the digital delivery system is a very efficient way. So I see bringing down costs as reaching a larger audience in a delivery system where they don't have to come to campus.
Thank you, Nancy. But please.
I was going to say Tennessee's about to come to Maryland's aid here, but if I can just first associate with everything Nancy just said and add that I don't see, if I had brought my slideshow today, maybe I should have, I usually start with this picture, this grainy picture of this tweedy-looking fellow, sort of nerdy-looking guy, and see if anybody in the crowd knows who it is. Almost never anyone does. It's Joseph Schumpeter, who taught the world about creative destruction and the way in which new technologies, new business theories subvert, displace, sometimes destroy, what was before. And this is what we're all we're all wondering whether we're next, I don't think so. If we do what we can and what we do well now, modify to the new world. As I was listening to Nancy, we brought to Indiana the Western Governors University in a big way, private labeled it, so to speak, make it seem more local. It's grown explosively, but it's not competing with Purdue University or even our other publics to any meaningful extent. There's a huge ocean of people out there. In a state of 6.5 million, we have 750,000 people, 6.5 million including infants. We have 750,000 people who had some college and never finished. And there has to be an opportunity for them. It's just as Nancy said, it's probably not going to be residential on our campus. So we are big boosters of this. We will seek, where Purdue can, to shape parallel offerings that may aim at parallel audiences. But we all have a stake in this, in perfecting these modes. And I don't think it's a mortal threat to us the way some people do.
We'll come back to this issue because I'm not going to let you off the hook.
Fair enough.
I am completely in support of online and on-site, bricks and clicks, and high-tech and high-touch. But when you say that you don't make money it's got to be eventually financially sustainable. But we'll come to that because we have a question here. Please identify yourself and your institution or your background.
Jimmy Cheek, Chancellor of the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. Governor, I had a question for you. You have a great engineering school, and one of the things that happens in engineering schools and sometimes business schools, I think both at Purdue, you use differential tuition. And how is that impacted by your freeze? And how important is that for colleges of engineering and colleges of business and perhaps others at Purdue to use a differential fee as well?
We do have one. It's not excessive in my judgment, or I don't think in the judgment of our students and their families. It was frozen as well as in other words, we extend, a freeze meant freeze. There were a couple very, very small 2 or 3 step fee increases, and I do mean very small, that were already in train, and we didn't reverse those, but we didn't raise at the back door what we were claiming to freeze at the front door. What the future of that is, I'm not sure. The value of, we all know, of degrees in engineering or kindred disciplines is very high, and that delta may actually rise or be rising as we meet tonight. But our focus will still be on affordability for its own sake, keeping the doors to our university open, not merely to as many students as today, but more through the use of summer and so forth. Whatever expansions at least our current physical plant could accommodate. And I'd like as many of them to be Purdue engineers as can cut the mustard.
If no one comes to the microphone, I'm going to get that other question.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just trying to say, we're not in online-enabled learning to make money. And even when I've been to all the meetings with Coursera and edX and Udacity, and I'm listening to the novelty of MOOCs, we're not in it for child's play or fun or trying a new experimental mode. We're in it for the utility of educating more people, and I think educating them effectively. It will be different than on campus, it will be different than hybrid, but we in America, this is really what I'm trying to say, we're operating at the margins. There are so many people who are undereducated. We have to figure out a way to reach a broader population. And so we're working on a business plan. I don't think it's, I know Dennis would appreciate this, I don't think we're going to go into debt over this, but I don't think it's about making more money. I think it's about serving more people.
Very good. The woman in the back.
Bridget Burns. I'm an AC fellow at Arizona State, and I'm the chief of staff for the Oregon University System. I really appreciated your comments, and I want to ask the question about what we're going to do to incentivize more creativity within the academy to solve our own problems. It seems like we have all this intellectual capital and we spend none of it on solving our own problems. We give the PhDs in finance and economics, yet can't seem to figure out a new funding model for higher ed. We give degrees in marketing and communication, but we struggle with talking to the public about the public value of higher education. So what can we do as a community to try and feel a sense of ownership that we don't have to have outside experts solve our problems, but we can actually do it ourselves?
President Daniels, would you like to take a crack at it?
Well, I see a lot of the inertia and the incredible inertia in the system built into the structures that has grown up around colleges, around departments, around disciplines, everything. Talk about redundancies. I really admire a lot of the things Nancy has done, but right on a single campus, we've got room.
Right.
For a lot of room for improvement. We don't even procure things across colleges, let alone all our campuses, let alone what we should be doing, at least statewide in Indiana. We should buy things in conjunction with IU. It doesn't occur to anybody to do that. I don't know that the sense of threat is felt deeply enough by people with, who have, first of all, it's not a criticism, it's just as human as it can be, but higher ed has led a very charmed life, deservedly so. Everything we said about its value to the country is true, but money has been plentiful. Third-party payment has made, let's face it, has made it easier to raise spending and tuitions with it. And meanwhile, the protections that we properly extend to academic freedom have led to a rigidity that you just won't find anywhere else. And I just don't know that, even swamped as we are in books, studies, and all the predictions of severe change coming, that it's penetrated. So we will try to see if we can move at that faster speed that I referred to earlier, but I can't promise you that this can be made to happen.
Now the conversation is getting interesting. But first, we have a question here.
Lee Jackson, I'm the chancellor of the University of North Texas System, 3 campuses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Nancy, I'm sorry I didn't get to the microphone fast enough to save you from that last question. I wanted to ask about performance funding incentives, both for institutions and students. There's a lot of talk about it. The president has called for a new kind of report card. Most of our states are working on performance funding. It's a fairly hard thing to achieve and do well, but it seems that it's coming. There's not so much talk about the needs to reform and improve the Pell system and provide better incentives for students and families, rewards for persistent performance, higher standards of retention and progress. Do you see any opportunity or likelihood that these performance incentives, A, are going to happen, and B, that they would be meaningful, either for institutions or for students?
Well, I think we all see in our states one level or another of performance-based budgeting, and I think that the rule of thumb would be that we get the system articulated ahead of the public policymakers, because we might have a better shot at knowing what our data capacities are and naming the metrics that matter most. But frankly, the National Association of System Heads met earlier today, and we spent a lot of time on the scorecard idea, but more importantly, the reforms of Pell. We have a huge opportunity to reform, to create an incentive system within Pell that means users of Pell will utilize the funding better. We will create incentives for progress so that you get the Pell money not in lump sum. So whether the Pell discussion will evolve through a connection of some kind of rating system, this is still a dialogue we need to open full on about how Pell can better serve us. And I hope this is that moment. I think we're going to have a painful experience in getting the scorecard right, but I think we better be piloting some data systems to figure out how to do that, because over time it probably will happen.
I have almost entirely a one-state perspective, so I don't know the extent to which it's useful, but I will say our state was early into the process of institutional performance measurement, and I've been struck now for the several years that it's been in existence at how responsive the system is. In other words, it's less than 10% of the budget is based on our performance formula, but even when it debuted, I think 5% initially, really seemed to command the attention of all the universities and their presidents, endless wrangling and agonizing over I said, if this is what happens at 5%, what if it were 50% like it maybe should be? So I think I'm encouraged actually by how much it does seem to have the possibility to modify behavior. Now on the student end, we have just ventured into this, And here, I think it has all the advantages Nancy just talked about. But again, what I don't see as clearly is whether we can do this in a way that reflects those realities about students, how many hours they really can be expected to take given other things going on in their lives. You know, a 15-hour or else rule might work fine on our flagship campus, but not on our regionals, for instance.
Yes, sir.
Rotindra Bose, Vice Chancellor for Research and Technology Transfer at the University of Houston. Everybody is talking about shortage in STEM or STEAM, President Daniels. And we are all trying to recruit the best and brightest. And some projection that every year we have a shortage of 25,000 engineers in this country. If we put our collective thoughts together and say those fields in engineering and sciences, they're going to go to colleges at their choice, free. Can we not waive their tuition when they graduate? If the country is serious for this 20,000 shortage of engineers and scientists, and I can do a simple math, it's not billions of dollars. And collectively, we can give all these students tuition-free status. Wouldn't that attract this thing? We do that for graduate students anyhow. And this is how I came to this country. We got a free education at Georgetown. Can we not extend that concept to certain areas of national need? It's not a big challenge. And Chancellor Zimpher said it's a collective thoughts, putting our thoughts together, and I'm sure APLU can come up with a solution for this crisis.
I think you just have to say, if we had a strategy that could increase our numbers significantly, then I think that's a proposal we can take to investors, whether it's the federal government or our states. But I think we have to first come up with the collective strategy and what we can yield by working together. And who knows, maybe that would open up a funding stream if we had that strategy.
We have about 5 more minutes, and we'll take one more question from the floor, and then I would like to conclude with a common question for both of our panelists. Please.
Well, thank you. This is Tim White. I'm the Chancellor of the California State University, and I've enjoyed the discussion today. Just a comment or two that may provoke more comments from the folks in the front there. When I think about the role of technology in California, you know, we're having a lot of fun with it as well, is to make sure that we view it as one more arrow in the quiver of how we reach the complex society that we're trying to serve as a public university. And with a special concern to not push those who've been marginalized in the past further to the margins. For example, technology, while may being useful for somebody who's had some education, it doesn't come from the barrios of Los Angeles with a poor school, but rather has had learned how to learn along the way, would be more effective. But if they simply need somebody to help them understand the basics of mathematics or chemistry, that they actually need a high touch as well as a high tech. So I have not heard explicitly, I've heard implied in your conversations about the margins of society needing to become more mainstream. The second thing to think about is on the performance side of funding is to be damn sure that we end up measuring what we value. And what we value differs across this nation. It differs across the flagship research ones to the comprehensive bachelor's and master's degrees. And that was, we look at national policy or state policy, that we have to recognize this heterogeneity across mission, because America is only going to be served if everybody with the intellect and the willingness to work, regardless of their stage in life, has an opportunity to do so.
Thank you. Would either one of you like to comment?
Governor?
Well, it's well said. I mean, there are limits, certainly to how deeply into society our university can reach, but that's the reason, of course, that we have a layered system, and I think at least in our state, it can truly be said that not every student can go to every school, but that there is a school for every student. In some cases, that may be, in many cases, that will be a non-residential opportunity. But that doesn't, for a moment, excuse us from the duty to reach as many as we can and to reach as deeply as we can and to hold ourselves fully responsible for the success of each student who we do attract. I also agree with the comment I believe the gentleman was making about the caution with which we should look at any idea of a purely national uniform set of performance measures. It may be possible for someone to devise that, but I just will believe it when I see it.
I would trade my closing question for a comment on what you said, Tim, because I had a very special experience in Cincinnati to work with the community around all students who were marginalized because of economic issues. And I saw University of Cincinnati, Xavier, Northern Kentucky University, Gateway Community College, Cincinnati Tech, work with the school district, work with all the social agencies, work with the philanthropists to literally get every student engaged. I don't think we can afford to leave any students behind, but we can't put the pressure solely on our K-12 colleagues. We have to get in the game. And that's going to be done community by community. I don't think federal policy can solve that for us. They can incentivize our partnerships. I don't think states can solve the problem. I think they can incentivize our behavior, but I think what's called for is a change of behavior of universities to own the entire education process, largely connected by what many of us do every day, which is prepare educators who serve in these systems. That's going to get us somewhere, but we're going to have to roll up our sleeves, get our hands into the business of getting every student ready for college, and that starts when they're quite young. And to me, that's a solution. That is a solution to a big social problem for our country.
Well, let me conclude this opening session, which deals with transforming higher education. And we have here on stage two transformative leaders. So let me conclude by asking each of you to share with us what are the one or two most important qualities to be a transformative leader in American higher education today. This is therefore a question about your personal leadership style in order to achieve the vision and the goals that you have so eloquently described this afternoon.
I'm not ready to accept the label that you've tried to confer twice so far. You know, that, like everything else in life, ultimately that'll be a matter of results. And I don't have many to show, any big ones to show in 10 months. But I will say, I'm asked frequently, you know, how different or not it is to try to be in the position I'm in now. And I compared to other places I've worked. And my answer, Wallace, is that it's not nearly so different as people think. There aren't very many places left in life. Nancy quoted the Collins book and so forth. It's full of the idea that effective leadership these days requires that people in the endeavor, whatever it is, voluntarily align around very clear objectives, hopefully compelling objectives big enough to matter if achieved, big enough to perhaps animate and inspire people to want to achieve them. And to me, that's the essence of the positions that we are so lucky to hold. It doesn't either bother me or strike me as alien to other experiences that you can't just give orders and people jump. There just aren't very many places like that left. And that's good. In a well-educated society, you should expect and desire people to have their own ideas and and want to have their own input into decisions. So I believe that facing squarely, I'll try to summarize and give you the short answer you really were looking for at the beginning. To face reality squarely, to be prepared to take risks, to be as open to other ideas as you can, but also willing to make decisions and move as opposed to be paralyzed by the uncertainties that are always going to be there. Probably these are the qualities that we're all going to have to display if we're going to lead our institutions to better, more secure, more successful places. And I just hope to be. I know there are a lot of people in this room who will measure up to that and more. And I just hope to one day say I was one of them.
I was trying to avoid this, The privilege to be with Mitch and Wallace is a real delight. I didn't know either of you very well, and I look forward to serving with you. I agree with what President Daniels said. I think there is a theory of action and a theory of leadership that each of us lives by. We may not articulate it, but we exercise it every day. So the thing that I think lifts me up every day is my incredible personal privilege to work in education. I believe every other issue of human development can be solved if we can just educate more people to be healthier and happier and be better citizens. I think we'd be a better world, and that is the business we're in. What a privilege.
I want to thank President Daniels and Chancellor Zimpher for your very thoughtful remarks this evening. And Peter, thank you for organizing this opening session. And just before we adjourn, as moderator, I want to have the last word. And I want to share, not my theory of leadership, I want to share with you a prayer that I think may be applicable to these transformative times that we live in. And it's the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, when he said, "Grant me the serenity to accept what I cannot change, the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." I think those may be some of the qualities that are needed in these transformative days in American higher education. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you, Wallace.